Hello, we're at this year's West Country Quilt and Textile Show, and we're talking to lots of people here at the show this year. My next guest is Nancy Adamek, and she's from linapatchwork.com. Hiya, Nancy.
Hello, how are you?
Really well, thank you. How are you enjoying the show?
It's a nice show, it's a lovely layout, it's good. Yeah, it's been good, positive.
Now, you're from a fairly young company. What is it that you do?
We manufacture paper pieces for English paper piecing.
Right, I've never heard of this before, so you're going to have to start right at the beginning.
Well, this is pretty much the beginning of patchwork. In the old days, people would cut their own paper shapes to make patterns, and then they would stitch the fabric to the paper shape to stabilize it. It's like a template, and then they would sew over the edges, sew them together, and then afterwards take the paper out again.
Okay, so what do you do with the paper?
We do the same thing, but we actually cut the shapes for our customers so that they have more time for sewing, which is, it's a convenience, really.
So how does it work with the customer then? Do they come to you?
They come to me and say, I'm looking for this shape in this size, can you do it for me? And then I say yes or no. Most of the time I say yes, of course. We have an enormous amount of different shapes and different sizes now. I think we have over 12 different sizes of hexagons, for example, and the same for diamonds, and they get combined into patterns. And they mail order from us, or they phone me, or they come to the shows and we buy them.
What are the most popular shapes that people request from you?
Oh, without a doubt, a hexagon.
Why? Why the hexagon, do you think?
I suppose it is the classic shape. Most people know the hexagon. They know it will go together and make a flower, and a lot of the really old-fashioned patterns just use hexagons, and that's where it comes from. But also, they are not easy to sew on the sewing machine, and until recently, there were no really quick methods to sew these shapes into patterns on the machine, and that's why the technique has survived. That, and the fact that it is hand sewing. You don't need a machine to do this. It's hand sewing, it's portable, you can take it on holiday with you, it will fit in your handbag even. So it's a convenience way of sewing, and we call it slow stitching. People find it incredibly relaxing. They just sit down and they do a few hexagons, and yeah.
So that's the most popular shape. What about the most unusual shape that somebody's requested from you that you've had to sit down and think about a little while?
They pop up all the time because a lot of the designers draw up their own patterns on the computer. Just, graphics design programs. And then I have to figure out what angle these funny triangle kite shapes actually have, which is a challenge.
So you use computers to draw out the shape first of all?
Because all it is geometric shapes. So you could just take a piece of paper and start drawing lines and then cut out the shapes and sew them together. It would be English paper piecing.
You've brought some samples along with you, so
Yes.
Just talk us through some of these, please.
Yes, I have brought a few samples for you. I didn't bring any hexagons. I do apologise, but we've all seen a hexagon. We know
what one. Yeah,
Yes.
Just think 20p piece.
So what I brought is a diamond shape. Well, it's a rhombus really, but in patchwork we call it a diamond because they are a girl's best friend, obviously. And this one is a really pointy one. It's a 45-degree angle, so we need to know a little bit about geometry and our shapes and names. And the angles are usually very important. So there's a 45-degree angle in these tips. And what we do is we would cut our fabric bigger than the paper shape, roughly 1/4 inch. I always advise to cut it a bit bigger than that. So it's more convenient. You want to have enough fabric excess to fold around the paper shape conveniently. And that's what you do. You cut your fabric. I usually cut them in strips and then cut off with scissors. So it's low tech. You need a needle, a good pair of scissors, that's all. And a good pair of paper shapes. Then you would start folding the fabric over and you would stitch on a big shape like this through the paper until it's all covered. Here's one I made earlier.
Very good.
Yes, well, we try to be prepared. And the interesting thing with diamonds compared to hexagons is that they have the sharp points, and that means when you fold the fabric around, you make a little tail, like here on this one. I don't know if you can see that on the camera there. And some tip for our viewers is you would always want to turn the fabric over in the same direction and always fold it in the same direction. So on a hexagon, all the pleats on the back fold in the same direction, and then your points, or your tails on the points will all point in the same way. Doesn't matter what sort of shape it is, they would all point one way. Oh, that one also points that way. So when you come to sewing these together, they will nestle on top of each other, and they don't get in each other's way, and they make nice little rosettes on the back of your shapes.
So
Make
pretty.
nice points where they meet as well.
Beautiful.
So I did bring a few things here to show you. This shape here is a kite, sort of reminds us of an old-fashioned kite. And I have sewn these shapes into stars, 4-pointed stars, like this one here, very pretty. Try to use 2 different colors just to offset it a bit. And then they are surrounded with my diamonds here. Don't know if the camera can see that, whether they're interested at all. Well, so they go around. And these shapes are all matched up to each other. That's the important thing. And then in the end, you end up with a nice little block like this. And you can match those up to each other into strips. And then you can sew these strips into a quilt top.
Fantastic.
And it's quite simple. It's simple sewing, nothing complicated.
As I mentioned, you're a new business, a growing business. What's the industry like at the moment?
It's a bit challenging. It is a great time for opportunity as well. Hand sewing and crafts and needlework has a huge revival at the moment, and we're riding the wave of that, of course.
What would you put that down to? That revival?
The last recession, people were staying more in at home, and they then realized that they need something to do, and they picked up the old crafts again and started knitting, rediscovered crochet, and it has a revival. It seems to come sort of in waves every 30 years. And patchwork is the same.
So business is growing, but it's a kind of slow burner by the sounds of things at the moment.
Yes, it's going to be challenging. Yeah, it may well be challenging. But I'm trying to anticipate that, and I try to design my own patterns. Because the interesting thing is that patchworkers have taken the old patterns and have developed them further. And they make their own patterns, and I've started to make my own patterns, which is great. And I love it. I always loved jigsaws. As a child, I was always playing with jigsaws. And now it's like, I can make my own jigsaws. Brilliant.
It's nice not having somebody telling you what to do. You can make your own decisions on that. Let's just hear about the name of your company, Lina Patchwork. There's a nice story behind this.
Well, yes. My mother was called Lillian. She was Danish, and she taught me patchwork. She was a patchwork tutor as well. And I wanted to name the business after my mum. Because I owe all the quilting legacy to her. But the name was unfortunately taken as an online business, so I couldn't call it Lillian. And I didn't want to call it Nancy, because I didn't really want to be in the limelight. She's quite funny. So a friend of mine suggested to play with an anagram of our names, Lillian and Nancy, and that's how it came out, Lina, Lillian, Nancy. And I wanted it to sound old-fashioned, because it's an old-fashioned technique.
A lot of women learn a skill like patchwork, as you've explained, from their mother. Yeah. Do you think this skill is being passed down still to generations?
I hope so. I hope so. It would be a shame if a lot of the skills are lost, and I'm glad to see so many displays here of old-fashioned crafts like tatting and so, because once they're lost, they're lost. It's very difficult to pick them up again.
Well, I'm asking everybody that we interview for perhaps a hot tip for 2017, or perhaps a time-saving technique that you could pass on to our viewers. So, totally put you on the spot, Nancy. Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Good quality tools. That's one of my mantras. Always have good quality tools, good pairs of scissors, good needles, good quality thread. It makes all the difference. And of course, good paper pieces when you're using paper. There's nothing wrong with cutting your own papers, but use a really thicker quality paper, not your writing paper, it's not really good enough. And for the young women, they have discovered glue pens. So rather than hand stitching the fabric to the papers, you can use a glue pen.
That's even quicker.
Well, I'm quicker with a needle. It depends on your viewpoint. Some ladies are really quick with it. I tried it and I actually enjoy the hand stitching. So.
Great. Thank you very much for those tips, Nancy. Nancy Adamek from linapatchwork.com.